On this episode, we talk about how can I find faith, will my pooch go to heaven, and we introduce you, and you're not going to edit this, we introduce you to our cameraman, Simon.
So welcome to TGI Mondays, and this is the Christmas episode, hence the ritual humiliation of the Christmas jumper, which was bought for me. So there's no more black today. And thanks for all your interactions that we've had. Thanks for all the comments and the questions, because without all those comments and questions, there wouldn't be a show, because we're here to answer your questions. So let's have this week's questions then.
So first question is from Paul Evans, who asked this on our Facebook page. My dog Trinity recently passed away. We're very sorry to hear that, Paul. When she was alive, she displayed all of the human emotions I can think of, including a great deal of love. Does she have a soul, and what is the criteria for officially being deemed to have a soul? Zoe, do you want to kick us off on that?
Well, as someone who has in the past 2 months conducted 2 giant stick insect funerals with my grieving daughter.
What sort of coffin do you use?
You know,
Matchbox?
No, giant stick insect. So this was more like a sarcophagus.
Wow.
And the reason I did that, and actually I didn't do that with tongue-in-cheek, because I've seen the relationship that my daughters had from these tiny little hatchlings until they produced offspring of their own. So the life cycle actually has really genuinely been a relationship that's had profound meaning for my daughter. And the baby Dagoos we're about to adopt, I'm sure will have the same. But she totally experienced them as a companion and as a friend. And we've got lots of animals actually, and they are definitely more than trinkets, that's for sure.
I think as well, for me, being an ex-scientist, it's only when my children and we had our cats, I started to fully appreciate that. And there is a real relationship there between the pet and the child, and it's part of the family, really.
And without words, actually, that's quite.
Yeah.
And so if we move on to what Paul is actually asking is, do those emotions and those sort of relationships that we have, does that mean that we think these animals have souls? What do we think? Yeah.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because there's nothing in the Bible specifically to tell us where our pets are going, and I think that's always going to make the question slightly impossible for us to fully resolve. But there are indicators that might help us to kind of come to some kind of informed decision. I think the first thing is the reality is that God is going to redeem the entire cosmos. It's not just us that are going to be redeemed, but it's going to be everything. And when you look at Noah's Ark, it wasn't just humans, it wasn't just Noah's family that were redeemed. Actually, there were animals there too. So I think it gives us a hopeful sign. But whether my dog Jupe is going to actually be there, you know, when I don't know, because there's nothing to say that the resurrection is going to include an animal resurrection. In fact, I would suggest probably not.
No.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think when I read this question, I genuinely looked at it and thought, I don't know. I do think there is something distinctive about human beings, and I think the Bible does make that quite clear. It talks about us being made in the image of God, differently from the animals, and it talks about in that creation story at the beginning, God breathing life, breathing his spirit into Adam. And there's a reason, isn't there, why God came in human form. He couldn't have come to redeem the world if he'd come as some other. I think Thomas Aquinas talks about him, could he have come as a cucumber or something like that? You know, there is something distinctive about human beings and something distinctive about us, as you say, with respect to the resurrection. But
there is something also about the whole of creation reflecting God's glory, however you approach, be that creation or evolution, which is another debate. But I think what we experience in all sorts of different ways, cosmically, to use your word.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, I think it's important. I totally agree with you that you know, this is a God of a much bigger than our minds.
Yeah, much bigger than just us.
Yeah, and actually that mystery, wouldn't it be rubbish if we thought we could pin down exactly what we thought life after death was like?
Yeah.
And when I don't know about many of you, but I've travelled the road to death with people, and that moment when we die, something changes.
Yeah.
There's something in the person that isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's also true with animals.
Yes.
Because actually this is all about relational
But it's
stuff.
happened to
And
see-
we're more than our bodies, and so must
But it's the
animals
same the
be.
other way around, though. Because I remember when my son was born, and even though I understand to a certain extent exactly how the embryology and all the rest of it comes about, and how his DNA had created him, there was something mysterious and wonderful about that person being alive, which can't be reduced to chemistry.
No.
And I think
that's
that at the end of the Bible, it does say, at the end of all things, God says, "Behold, I make all things new."
Yeah.
And I think sometimes in Christianity, especially in the Protestant end of things, we're focused only on people, and we don't fully appreciate that the whole of nature, the whole of the animal kingdom sings back to God.
Yeah.
It's like that Christmas carol, Heaven and Nature Sing.
Yeah.
And
You have to look at a
lost
sunset to know some of that stuff.
Well, so on
the
that
heavens
note,
declare the glory of God.
I
It's
think it
always
would be
like that.
helpful to move on perhaps to our next question. I'm sorry, Paul, we may have given you quite a confused answer there. I think we don't
Questions and
really
answers.
know is the
But there are
answer.
signs of hope.
There are definitely
Yes.
signs of
Yeah,
hope.
where
Signs
love
of
is
hope.
found.
And
God
so
is.
to move on to our next question, this is from one of Hal's friends, Andrew Highfield, and he asks, I hear of people finding faith or God, but how do I do that? Hal, perhaps since you know him, you'd like to start off.
Well, I think the first
answering
thing
that.
to talk about with finding faith is a relationship.
Yeah.
It's not about ascribing to a certain type of ideas. So it's not like an equation. Like, I believe in the equation because this, and this. It's a relationship. It's more than that. And I think that, like I was saying before about when my son was born, there's something different. Even though I understood the science and everything else about it, there's something mysterious and wonderful about the birth of my son and the fact that he's alive. And I think the way to understand that relationship is to get to know God, because at Christmas, Jesus is born, like you said, not as a cucumber, I like that, but as a human being that we can get to know. And how we do that is by prayer, really, by beginning to listen to God and beginning to form that relationship with him, which is quite frightening because we might feel a bit silly because we're constantly told that's a silly thing to do. And really, do we have the courage to begin that relationship? Do we have the bottle?
Well, and it depends what we mean by prayer as well. I grew up outside of a church tradition and just had this sense that somebody else was there, and that wasn't because I was praying or even what I was hearing at school, although the Christian faith did begin to give me a language to express something that I was already experiencing. But I think prayer as listening, prayer as attentiveness, prayer as mindful space, just perhaps even just being open to something beyond our own circular patterns of thought and saying, okay, so what is all of this about? And being brave enough to just stand in the I don't know space.
And journeying to discover God is not just a journey of looking who God is, it's about learning about who yourself
Completely.
is also. And you learn that actually you're infinitely precious to God because you're made in his image. And yet it's a damaged image. It's an image that's marred by sin. And so when you're learning about God, you're also learning about yourself. And I think that's where a lot of the challenge comes, because you have to not just accept who God is, you have to accept who you are.
Yes.
And sometimes that can be really empowering, because actually if you have a low self-esteem, if you feel unimportant, you suddenly realise that your value is beyond yourself, and actually you really do matter.
And the
But-
amazing... Oh,
But
God.
it also destroys your pride.
Yes.
That if you think you're too good, actually there's something really quite messed up in you,
Yeah.
and God needs to resolve that, and that's why he came to do that.
Well,
very
and
thing.
that's the amazing thing, isn't it? Because this question talks about how do we find faith or God. But actually the amazing thing is that God is the one who takes the initiative.
Yeah.
He comes to find us. And that's really what the Christmas story is about, isn't it? That God didn't just stay up in heaven kind of waiting for us to find him. He came in the form of a baby as a human being who lived a life like ours, who understands us, who knows what it's like.
Yep.
And he is the one who comes and takes that step and says, look, here I am. So maybe actually, Andrew and anyone else who's asking that kind of question, Christmas would be a great time to start thinking about that, to really think about what it is, what it means that God came for you. To earth.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of surrender in that, actually. The stuff you're talking about, knowing yourself, and the idea of just being able to be honest about, do you know what, it's all right that I can reach beyond myself, because I really can't answer all of my own questions. I really can't. And actually that's not even the point. But there's huge freedom in just saying, I don't know, and I can't do everything. So it's that thing about letting your God see you.
But it's
and
hard to
allowing
surrender,
yourself
isn't
to
it?
be
That's the toughest change.
Yeah, completely.
That's the toughest change, to
But it's where the freedom
give yourself over.
But the point of it all, I think the point with this
Relief.
all the time is that one of the greatest lies in our society is that we can have absolute certainty for things. And the point of it all is that nothing is really certain. And I love my family because I love them. And I can't be certain about that. I can't be certain my missus loves me, but I trust her to love me. And it's the same with God. Is I can't be certain about it, but if I'm willing to bet my life on my relationship with my wife and my kids, then why can't I bet that on God?
Well, there we go. So this has been our last episode before Christmas. As you can see, we've decorated for the occasion, and we'd all like to wish you all...
Just before we do that, we've got one other person.
Sorry.
One other person.
Yes, the full team needs to come in shot so that we can all together take the time, Simon.
Don't chop this.
Microphone booms with you. That's often.
Yeah.
There we go. So we just want to join together in wishing you all a very happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
That's weird.
Gosh, my red really clashes with Howell's red. And your red really clashes with Zoe's red.
Pink chasuble.
I'm not comfortable enough with my masculinity
To wear a pink chasuble.